The twin suns of Prime were setting when the first warship appeared in the sky. It came slowly, like a dark cloud that would not move with the wind. Then another ship appeared, and another. Soon, the entire sky was filled with them, blocking out the light until the whole colony fell into shadow. Stood on the roof of the colony's main building and watched the ships descend. He was old, even by standards, and he had seen many things in his long life. But he had never seen anything like this. The hegemony had come, and everyone knew what that meant. They were not fighters. They had thin arms and large dark eyes that were made for reading and studying, not for war. Their skin was pale blue, almost white, and their bodies were built for thinking, not for battle. They had come to Prime 3 generations ago to build a peaceful life away from the busy center of the galaxy. They had farms and schools and libraries. They had families and children and dreams. They did not have weapons. They did not have soldiers. They had nothing that could stop what was coming. "Commander," a voice said behind him, turned to see climbing onto the roof. She was young, barely 30 years old, and she worked as the colony's communications officer. Her large eyes were filled with fear, but she was trying hard not to show it. "The shields are up, but one says they will not last long." Nodded slowly. One was their best engineer, a clever old male who had built their shield generator from broken mining equipment. It was a miracle that it worked at all, but miracles did not last forever. "How long?" asked. "A few hours, maybe less." Looked back at the sky. The ships were releasing drop pods now, hundreds of them falling toward the surface like black rain. Each pod carried warriors, massive creatures covered in hard shells, with claws that could tear through metal and teeth that could crush bone. They had already destroyed 6 colonies in this sector. They killed everyone. Men, women, children. It did not matter to them. "Get everyone into the underground shelters," said. "All of them. Tell them to bring food and water. Tell them to bring the children first." Hesitated. "Sir, what about you?" "I will come soon. First I must do something." Wanted to argue, but she knew there was no time. She turned and ran back down into the building, shouting orders as she went. Stayed on the roof a moment longer. He thought about his wife who had died 10 years ago. He thought about his children who lived on another world far from here. He thought about all the people in the colony who had trusted him to keep them safe. He had failed them. There was nothing he could do to stop them. All he could do was give them a few more hours of life. But then he remembered something. 3 weeks ago had sent a distress signal into space. It was a desperate act, a cry for help to anyone who might be listening. They had sent it to the Galactic Council, but the Council did not care about small colonies on the edge of known space. They had sent it to the trade guilds, but the guilds only cared about money. They had sent it everywhere, hoping someone would answer. No one had answered. Went down to the shelter. The underground rooms were filling with people, families holding each other, parents trying to calm crying children. The air was thick with fear. Everyone knew what was happening above them. Everyone knew this might be their last night alive. He found at her console, trying to boost the shield frequency. Beside her, one was working on the power systems, his thin fingers moving fast over the controls. "Any response to our signal?" asked. Shook her head without looking up. "Nothing, sir. The council said they would send a message to the nearest military base, but that is 3 days away. We do not have 3 days." Sat down heavily. 3 days. They would all be dead in 3 hours. Then suddenly console made a sound. A small light began to blink. She stared at it for a moment, not understanding. "Sir," she said slowly, "I am receiving a transmission." "The council." "No, it is. I do not know. The language is strange. I am running it through the translator now." The shelter fell silent. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at its console. The translator worked for a few seconds, then a voice came through the speakers. It was a voice none of them had ever heard before. It was deep and steady and calm. Colony Prime, this is Captain Park, one of the Terran Republic Rapid Response Division. Hold your position. We are coming. We will arrive in 7 minutes. Felt his heart stop. Terran Republic, that meant humans. He had heard stories about humans, of course. Everyone in the galaxy had heard stories. They were a young species, barely 100 years in space. They were small and soft, with no claws or shells or natural weapons. They were said to be aggressive and unpredictable, more like wild animals than civilized beings. Most species avoided them. But they had answered. 7 minutes, one whispered. The shields will hold for 7 minutes. Stood up. He did not know what the humans could do against a full invasion force. He did not know if they were coming to help or to make things worse. But for the first time since the ships appeared in the sky, he felt something he had not expected to feel. Hoping. He said, send a reply. Tell them we are here. Tell them we are waiting. His fingers moved across the console. Her voice shook as she spoke into the microphone. Terran vessel, this is Colony Prime. We hear you. Please hurry, please. There was a moment of silence. Then the human voice came again, and this time could hear something in it that he had not noticed before. It was not just calm. It was confident. It was the voice of someone who had done this before. We are already falling, Prime. Keep your heads down. Help is on the way. Above the colony, the warriors were breaking through the outer shield. They were laughing, making sounds of joy as they prepared to slaughter another helpless world. They did not see the 32 lights falling from the sky behind them. The ship was called the Indomitable, and it was not much to look at. It was an old frigate that had been repaired so many times that almost nothing original remained. The hull was patched with different colored metal plates. The engines made strange sounds when they pushed too hard. The life support systems worked most of the time, but not always. But the soldiers inside the ship were not there for comfort. They were there to fight. Captain Park once stood in the drop bay and looked at her soldiers. There were 32 of them, men and women in black armor that covered them from head to toe. They were checking their weapons, tightening their straps, and saying quiet prayers to whatever gods they believed in. Some of them were veterans who had done this many times. Some of them were new, and this would be their first real battle. One was 43 years old. She had short black hair that was turning gray at the edges, and her face had scars from battles she did not like to talk about. She had been a soldier for 22 years, and she had seen things that would make most people go mad. But she was still here. She was still fighting. Listen up, she said, and her voice was loud enough to cut through the noise of the ship. Everyone stopped and looked at her. The colony below us is called Prime. The people there are called they are scholars and farmers. They have no military. They have no weapons. They have nothing that can stop what is coming for them. She paused and looked at each of her soldiers in turn. They are landing in force. By our count, there are at least 300 warriors on the ground with more coming. By the time the regular military gets here, everyone in that colony will be dead. Men, women, children, all of them. Sergeant Han Dong stepped forward. He was a big man with a thick beard and a long scar that ran down the left side of his face. He had been fighting alongside one for 15 years, and he knew her better than anyone. Captain, he said, are you telling me we are going to drop 32 soldiers against 300? One smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the kind of smile that made enemies nervous. That is exactly what I am telling you, Sergeant. Dong nodded slowly. He did not argue. He had followed one into worse situations than this. He trusted her. More importantly, he trusted the people around him. Then we had better make them remember us, he said. On the other side of the bay, Private Ah was trying very hard not to throw up. She was 19 years old, the youngest soldier in the unit, and this was her first combat drop. Her hands were shaking as she checked her rifle for the 5th time. She told herself it was just the cold, but she knew that was a lie. A hand touched her shoulder. She looked up and saw Corporal Bay standing beside her. Was 26, with kind eyes and a calm voice that made everything seem less frightening. "First time is always the hardest," said. "Just stay behind me, shoot what I shoot, keep your head down and keep moving, you will be fine." Ah wanted to believe her. She wanted to believe that everything would be okay. But she had read the reports about She knew what they did to the people they captured. She knew that many of the soldiers in this bay would not come back alive. "What if I freeze?" she asked quietly. "What if I cannot do it?" Leaned closer. "Then you think about the people in that colony. Think about the children who are hiding in the dark right now, waiting to die. Think about what we'll do to them if we fail. And then you do your job." Ah closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She thought about her own family back on Earth. She thought about her little brother who was only 12 years old. She imagined him hiding in a shelter, waiting for monsters to come and kill him. When she opened her eyes, her hands had stopped shaking. The ship shook as it entered the atmosphere of Prime. Through the small windows, the soldiers could see the planet below them, a beautiful world of green fields and blue oceans. They could also see the fires that had already started burning the colony. 30 seconds to drop, the pilot announced over the speakers. One sealed her helmet and walked to the front of the bay. The drop pods were ready, small metal containers that would carry them through the fire and chaos of atmospheric entry and land them right in the middle of the battle. "Remember," she said, "the cannot fight. Every civilian we save is a victory. Every we kill is a message to the rest of the galaxy." "What message is that, Captain?" Dong asked. One looked at him through her helmet. Her eyes were hard and bright. "That humanity answers when someone calls for help. That we do not leave people to die. That if you come for the innocent, you will have to go through us first." The bay doors opened, and suddenly the soldiers could see the sky of Prime. It was orange and red with fire and smoke. Below them, the colony was burning. Above them, warships filled the sky like a dark ceiling. It looked like hell. 10 seconds. The soldiers stepped into their pods. Ah's heart was beating so hard she could feel it in her throat. Beside her, gave her one last nod. "See you on the ground, Private." 5 seconds. One's voice came over the radio, calm and steady as always. "For the people who cannot fight, for the children who are waiting, for humanity." 1 second. The pods launched. 32 humans fell from the sky, burning through the atmosphere like shooting stars. They fell toward a battle they could not win, toward an enemy that had never been defeated, toward a colony full of strangers they had never met. They fell anyway, because that was what humans did. The drop pod hit the ground hard, and one felt the impact shake through her entire body. For a moment, everything was dark and loud and confusing. Then the pod door blasted open, and she was on her feet, rifle in her hands, eyes scanning the smoke and fire around her. She had landed in what used to be a farm. The crops were burning. The buildings were destroyed. Somewhere nearby, she could hear the sounds of warriors moving through the smoke, their heavy feet crushing everything beneath them. "All units report," she said into her radio. One by one, her soldiers answered. 29 of them had landed safely. 3 pods had been hit by fire on the way down. Those soldiers were dead before they touched the ground. 29 soldiers against 300. One had faced worse odds before, but not by much. "Form up on me," she ordered. "Fire teams of 4. We push toward the civilian shelters. Kill anything that gets in our way." Sergeant Dong appeared out of the smoke, his rifle already raised. Behind him came the rest of the squad, moving fast and quiet despite their heavy armor. They had trained for this moment for years. They knew what to do. The first warrior appeared without warning. It came out of a burning building, 8 feet tall and covered in black shell that looked like armor made from darkness. Its eyes were red and filled with hunger. Its claws were long and sharp enough to cut through steel. The creature saw the humans and stopped. For a moment, it just looked at them as if it could not believe what it was seeing. These small creatures, barely half its size, standing in its path with their tiny weapons. They made a sound that might have been laughter. One shot it through the eye. They fell backward, dead before it hit the ground. Its laughter turned into a final, wet sound, and then there was silence. "Contact," one said calmly. "Push forward." The humans moved. In the underground shelter, watched through the colony's security cameras. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely control the console. Beside her, and one stood frozen, unable to speak. On the screens, they could see the humans fighting. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The humans did not hide behind cover and wait for the enemy to come to them. They ran forward, straight into the lines, firing their weapons without stopping. When one human fell, another stepped over the body and kept moving. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they pulled out knives and kept fighting. When their knives broke, they used their fists. They were bigger, they were stronger. They had natural armor and claws that could kill with a single strike. But the humans did not care. "This is impossible," one whispered. "No species fights like this. No species runs toward death." Did not answer. He was watching a single human on the screen, a soldier with a scar on her helmet who seemed to be everywhere at once. She was shouting orders, directing her troops, and killing with cold precision. She moved through the battlefield like she belonged there, like war was her natural home. That was Captain Park 1, and she was just getting started. On the ground, Private Ah was trying to remember how to breathe. She was behind a broken wall with Corporal, and there were two warriors coming toward them through the smoke. Ah said, "I need you to cover me. Can you do that?" Ah nodded, even though her whole body was screaming at her to run. She raised her rifle and aimed at the first. Her hands were steady now. She did not know how. Maybe the fear had burned away. Maybe there was nothing left but the job. Moved out from behind the wall, drawing the attention of the. They turned toward her, claws raised to strike. Ah pulled the trigger. Her first shot hit the in the shoulder, making it stumble. Her second shot hit its chest. Her third shot hit its head, and the creature fell. The second roared and charged at, dropped to one knee and fired upward, straight into the creature's mouth. It fell on top of her, dead, and she had to push it off with both hands. "Good shooting, Private," said, breathing hard. "Told you that you could do it." Ah looked at the dead at her feet. She had killed something. She had taken a life. She waited for the guilt to come, the horror, the shame. It did not come. All she felt was relief that was still alive. The battle continued. The humans pushed forward, meter by meter, killing and losing soldiers in return. They were taking losses they could not afford. Every death made them weaker. But they did not stop. They did not retreat. They kept moving toward the civilian shelters. One fought at the front, always at the front. Her armor was cracked and covered in blood. Her rifle was running low on ammunition, but she kept fighting because she knew what was waiting behind her. 2,000 civilians, men and women and children who had never held a weapon in their lives. People who had done nothing wrong except build a home on a planet that they wanted. She would not let them die, not today. "Captain," Dong shouted over the radio. "Heavy armor incoming from the landing zone." One looked up and saw it. A heavy unit, a walking tank covered in weapons and armor. It was moving toward them slowly, its guns already powering up. Nothing in her squad could hurt that thing. Nothing they had could even scratch its armor. 3 of her soldiers were standing in its path. "Fall back," she screamed. "Get out of there." The heavy unit fired. 3 humans died in a flash of light and heat. One felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear, not sadness, just a cold, hard determination that made everything very simple. That machine had to die. And she was going to find a way to kill it. The heavy unit moved through the colony like a monster from a nightmare. It was 3 times the size of a normal warrior, with 4 legs that crushed everything beneath them and 2 massive arms that ended in weapons instead of hands. Its armor was so thick that normal rifles could not even leave a mark on it. Its eyes glowed red in the smoke and fire. One pulled her soldiers back behind a collapsed building. They were down to 23 now, 9 soldiers dead in less than an hour, and the heavy unit was still coming. "Ideas?" she asked, her voice tight. Dong shook his head. "Our weapons cannot touch it, Captain. We would need heavy artillery or ship support, and we have neither." "What about its weak points?" "Heavy units have one weakness: the exhaust port on the bottom between the rear legs. If we could get an explosive inside there, it would destroy the power core." "And how do we get an explosive there?" Dong was quiet for a moment. Someone would have to run under it, get close enough to plant the charge. No one spoke. They all knew what that meant. The heavy unit's weapons could track and kill anything that came within 50 meters. Running under it was not a plan. It was suicide. "I will do it," a voice said. Everyone turned. Private Ah was standing at the back of the group, her rifle in her hands and her face pale but determined. "No," one said immediately. "You are too young. You have your whole life ahead of you." "With respect, Captain, that is exactly why I should do it. You and the sergeant are the best soldiers here. If you die, everyone dies, but I am just a private. I am replaceable." "No one is replaceable," said, her voice sharp. "Ah, you are not doing this." But Ah was not listening. She was looking at the security cameras that showed the inside of the civilian shelter. She could see the families huddled together in the dark. She could see the children clinging to their parents. She could see the fear in their large, dark eyes. "Those people down there," she said quietly, "they are counting on us. We came here to save them. If that thing reaches the shelters, everyone dies, all of them, every single child in that room." She looked back at one. "I joined the military because I wanted to protect people who could not protect themselves. This is my chance. Please, Captain, let me do this." One looked at her for a long moment. She saw herself in Ah's eyes, the same determination she had felt when she was young and believed she could change the galaxy. She wanted to say no. She wanted to order Ah to stand down. But she knew Ah was right. "Go," one said. "We will cover you as long as we can, make it count." Ah nodded. She did not say goodbye. She did not look back. She just started running. In the shelter, they had been watching and listening to everything. They heard the human soldiers talk about the heavy unit. They heard the young female volunteer to die for them. Felt something he had not felt in a very long time: shame. Here he was, hiding underground while strangers died to protect his people. These humans, these young soldiers from a species he had never met, were giving their lives for children. And what was he doing? Nothing. He was doing nothing. "One," he said suddenly, "the mining charges in Storage Bay 4, are they still there?" One looked confused. "Yes, but why? Those are just mining explosives. They are not weapons." "They are explosives. That is all that matters." Turned to the room full of frightened civilians. "Listen to me," he said, and his voice was louder than it had been in years. "I know we are not soldiers. I know we are not warriors. But there are people out there dying for us right now. Strangers who came from across the stars to save us. They are giving their blood and their lives for our children." He paused and looked at the faces around him. "I will not hide here while they die for us. I cannot. If any of you feel the same way, come with me now. We may not be fighters, but we can still help. We can still do something." For a moment no one moved. Then a young male stepped forward. Then an older female. Then another and another. Soon, nearly 50 were standing with their fear replaced by something else. Something old and forgotten. Something that had been sleeping inside them for generations. Pride. They gathered the mining charges and followed through the emergency exit. On the surface, Ah was running. The heavy unit had seen her and was turning its weapons toward her. She could hear the guns powering up. She could feel death coming for her. But she kept running. One and the others were firing everything they had at the heavy unit, trying to distract it, trying to buy a few more seconds. It was not working. The machine did not care about their small weapons. It only cared about the tiny human running toward it. Was 50 meters away when the first shot came. It missed her by centimeters, burning the ground beside her. 40 meters, another shot. This one hit her shoulder and she felt her armor crack. Pain exploded through her body, but she did not stop. 30 meters. She could see the exhaust port now, glowing orange beneath the machine. 20 meters. The guns were aimed directly at her. There was no way she could make it, no way at all. And then something impossible happened. A group appeared from nowhere, running toward the heavy unit from the other side. They were carrying boxes and shouting in their strange language. The machine's sensors detected new targets and turned, confused by the sudden attack from an unexpected direction. It was only a moment of hesitation, just a few seconds. But it was enough. Reached the heavy unit and threw herself under it. She pulled the explosive charge from her belt, armed it, and shoved it into the exhaust port with all her strength. Then she rolled away as fast as she could. The explosion was beautiful. Fire and light erupted from inside the machine, tearing through its power core and ripping it apart from within. The heavy unit screamed, a terrible mechanical sound, and then it collapsed in a heap of burning metal. Lay on the ground, her armor destroyed and her body broken. But she was alive. She was alive because a group of farmers had risked their lives to save her. Knelt beside her, his thin hands shaking. "Why?" he asked. "Why did you do this for us?" Looked up at him and smiled through the pain. "Because someone had to," she said. "Because you are worth saving." Behind them, the remaining warriors were retreating. They had seen their heavy unit fall. They had seen the humans and fighting side by side. They had never experienced anything like this before. For the first time in their history, they ran away. The battle ended with the rising of the twin suns. Orange and golden light spread across the colony, pushing away the darkness and smoke of the night before. The fires were still burning in some places, and the smell of death hung heavy in the air, but the fighting was over. They had retreated to their ships and fled into space. They left behind nearly 200 dead warriors, their black bodies scattered across the colony grounds. They had come to slaughter farmers and take another world for their empire. Instead, they had found something they never expected. They had found humans. Captain Park once stood in the center of the colony's main square. Her armor was cracked and covered in blood, some of it her own. Her face was tired, and her eyes were red from smoke and exhaustion. She had not slept in over 30 hours. She had lost 8 soldiers, good men and women who had trusted her to lead them. But behind her, 2,000 civilians were walking out of the underground shelters. They blinked in the sunlight, their large, dark eyes adjusting to the brightness. Children held their parents' hands. Old people leaned on the young. They were alive. All of them were alive because of what the humans had done. Dong walked up beside one. His armor was in even worse shape than hers, and he had a new scar across his forehead that would probably be there forever. "Captain," he said quietly, "they are gone. Our sensors show their ships jumping out of the system. They will not be back anytime soon." One nodded but did not speak. She was watching the families reunite with each other. She was watching children cry with relief instead of fear. She was watching life continue in a place that should have been full of death. This was why she fought, not for glory or money or power, for moments like this. "What about our people?" she asked. 8 dead, 12 wounded. Private is in critical condition, but the medics say she will survive. One closed her eyes. 8 dead. 8 soldiers who had families waiting for them back home. 8 soldiers who had believed in what they were doing enough to die for it. She would have to write letters to their families. She would have to find the words to explain why their children and siblings and parents were not coming back. She never found the right words, not once in 22 years. A movement caught her attention. An old was walking toward her through the crowd. It was the colony leader. He moved slowly, his thin body trembling, but his eyes were clear and bright. One straightened up and removed her helmet. It was a sign of respect, showing her face to him. Stopped a few feet away and looked at her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, then asked the question that had been burning inside him all night. "Why?" he said. "Why did you come? We are nothing to you. We have no resources, no technology, nothing to offer. We sent our signal to everyone and no one else answered. Only you, only humans. Why?" One was quiet for a moment. She thought about how to answer. She thought about all the complicated reasons she could give, the politics and the strategy and the calculations. But in the end, the truth was simple. "Because you asked for help," she said, "because someone had to answer. But your soldiers died for us. They gave their lives for people they never met. How can you accept that?" One looked at the bodies of her fallen soldiers, now covered with sheets on the edge of the square. She felt the pain of their loss like a wound in her chest, but she did not regret what they had done. She knew they would not regret it either. "That is what soldiers do," she said. "We stand between the darkness and the people who cannot fight it. We carry the weight so others do not have to." She paused and looked directly into his eyes. "The galaxy told us that humans are too young, too savage, too aggressive to belong among the stars. They said we were dangerous, that we could not be trusted. Maybe they were right. But if being civilized means watching innocent people die without lifting a finger to help, then I would rather be a savage." Was silent. Then, slowly, he stepped forward and performed an action that one did not understand at first. He pressed his forehead against her shoulder and held it there for several seconds. Later, she would learn that this was the most sacred gesture they knew. It was a promise of eternal friendship and gratitude, a bond that could never be broken. "Then perhaps," said softly, "the galaxy needs more savages." The news of what happened at Prime spread fast. Within days, every species in the galaxy knew the story. They watched the footage that had recorded, showing humans falling from the sky and fighting against impossible odds. They saw farmers picking up explosives and running into battle beside their protectors. They saw a young human woman nearly die to destroy a machine that was going to kill children she had never met. Some species called the humans crazy. Some called them dangerous. Some said this was exactly why humanity should be feared, because any species that fought like that was too unpredictable to trust. But on 100 other worlds, the story had a different effect. On colonies and stations and ships throughout the galaxy, people who had felt alone in the darkness heard about what the humans had done. They heard that someone had answered a cry for help. They heard that there were people in the universe who believed that strangers were worth dying for. And for the first time in a long time, they felt something they had forgotten: hope. 3 weeks after the battle, the Indomitable limped into the nearest repair station. The ship was barely holding together and the crew was exhausted. But they were alive, most of them, and they had done what they set out to do. Private Ah was in the medical bay, recovering from her wounds. She would never walk quite the same way again, and her left arm would always be weak. But she was alive. Corporal visited her every day, bringing her food and telling her jokes that were not very funny. One night, Ah asked to help her write a letter to her mother. Held the tablet while I spoke, her voice still rough from the smoke damage to her lungs. The letter talked about the battle and the fear and the pain. It talked about the soldiers who had died and the who had been saved. It talked about what it felt like to run toward death and somehow come out the other side. But the last part of the letter was the most important. "I know now why I joined the military," Ah said. "It was not for glory or adventure or because I wanted to prove something. It was because out here, in the cold and dark between the stars, Someone has to be willing to fall from the sky. Someone has to answer when people cry for help. I am proud to be one of those people. I am proud to be human. Did not say anything when Ah finished. She just wiped her eyes and sent the letter. On Prime, they began rebuilding. It would take years to repair all the damage, but they had time now. They had a future. In the center of the colony, they built a monument to the 8 humans who had died protecting them. It was simple, just 8 stones arranged in a circle, each one carved with a name. But every morning, when the twin suns rose, the children would gather at the monument and listen to the story of the Battle of Prime. They would learn about the strangers who fell from the sky, the soldiers who gave their lives for people they never knew. And they would remember. The galaxy was vast and dark and full of dangers, but somewhere out there, humans were watching. Humans were waiting, and if someone called for help, humans would answer. They would always answer. Because that was what humans did.